Hey guys, what is up? It is NoHelp and welcome back to another video today. So today Jagex released the Project Rebalance overview, Scythe, and Fang. So it looks like there's going to be some changes to that. So let's just dive right into this. Okay, so what is Project Rebalance? Project Rebalance started out as a game jam project. Mods Arcane, Halo, Husky, and Kieran decided to use their jam time to look at improving existing content rather than making something new. The project has evolved quite a bit since then, touching on a range of player and dev concerns around balancing power creep, reward space, and more. That's the what. The why is a little more complex. Some parts of the initial pitch were all about making underutilized content a little less obsolete so that players wouldn't find themselves checking the old school RuneScape wiki after a level up message and realizing their brand new unlock wasn't worth their time. Other parts looked at making early game content a little bit more intuitive, namely low level Slayer, so new adventurers could spend a little less time plugged into the wiki page or YouTube video and a little bit more time immersing themselves into Gielinor. So far a good, relatively low stakes, nice to have changes. When moving beyond the initial pitch though, there were some more high-stake questions around existing item power. Some pieces of equipment were doing far too much heavy lifting, others not doing enough to benefit their station. And of course, we wanted to lay the foundation for new reward space in the future. As it stands right now, Project Rebalance has undergone some serious expansion, and while we're confident in our rationale for many of the pieces, we want to start sharing our thoughts with you and finding out what you think. Okay, so this is a very brief overview. So there is a lot to go over before Project Rebalance can be put into action. When we're ready, we'll be addressing dedicated blogs for each section with an in-depth breakdown of what we'd like to do and why. In the meantime, let's start with an extremely brief summary of what we'll be tackling in the near future. It might not look all that brief, but in relation to the size of the project as a whole, this is definitely just the beginning. Okay, so we have agility, Slayer, thieving, and miscellaneous skilling tweaks. This section made up majority of the initial game jam pitch. While we're not going to go into specific detail, we'd like to give you a clear idea of everything that's being considered so that if you have any early thoughts, then we can see how they match up rather than leaving everybody to run wild with things that might be out of scope. So what's on the proverbial table? Okay, so some rebalancing of agility course XP rates and requirements. Removing some fail points that occur really close to the end of the agility course. That's great. Adjusting the level/diary requirements for some agility shortcuts while exploring the potential for new high-value shortcuts to make progress feel more rewarding. Improving the Brimhaven agility dungeon and making it competitive, high-effort alternative to more typical methods like rooftop courses. Rebalancing XP and fail rates at various NPCs to better position them with thieving progression. Rebalancing XP rates, respawn rates, and drop tables of various stalls to make them a little bit more desirable for everyone, not just pet hunters. Improving the gloves of silence. Removing various tasks from low-level Slayer masters. That is great. Adjusting quantity of NPCs offered for lower-level Slayer master task. Another great one. Adding a new Slayer unique or two to assist with early game Slayer. Improving the Dorkan light orb activity. Interesting. Streamlining creation of Gothic's rests. Okay, so those will be more useful now. Adding make all function to barbarian potions. Another great one because those are pretty much dead content, right? People use them on Ironman for agility or for Herblore XP. Improving the ring of pursuit. Improving the necklace of faith and reworking Faithi's aid. I'm not even really sure what that is. We want to give everyone more of a reason to have a go at interacting with more stalls, NPCs, or agility courses, not to look at shifting metas, but to give intrepid explorers a little more to be excited about when trying out some of their new unlocks. While some of you might be thinking sounds like dead content, it's important to remember that there are thousands upon thousands of players who log on every single day without getting involved in social media or reading around much. We'd love for these players to spread themselves out a little and maybe give the Brimhaven Agility Arena a go, or pickpocketing a Paladin or two. Early game Slayer is a whole other beast, and one that we'll cover in proper detail when we get around to this section's dedicated blog. That's crazy though, that like you don't think about that. Like, people log in every day and don't care about metas, don't care about YouTube videos, social media, anything. They just play the game. That's what we all should be doing. Okay, mining, another skill curiously not included with the 3 we've just mentioned. Mining's been a hot topic since our change to shooting stars earlier this year, and we want more people enjoying the diversity offered by mining. Without displacing existing mining methods or weakening their identity, here are some of the things we'd like to dig into. Okay, so improving Motherlode mining's position as a low-intensity method with some ore output. Improving volcanic mines' approachability, improving blast mines' viability, adjusting amethyst vein mining, adjusting mining gloves to make them feel more desirable for their price, reconsidering the hard Karamja diary requirement for lower gem mining. That is very good. Improving in-game messages to encourage charged amulet of glory usage while gem mining. Improving clue geode rates from regular mining. Add more viable spots for granite/sandstone to reduce competition for players looking to learn tick manipulation methods or just build up their supply of sand on iron accounts. Adjusting Volcano's drop system to give players more flexibility to choose between high GP per hour or high XP per hour without impacting uniques. And addressing group size/scaling issues with Volcano that can make finding a world difficult at times. I love this. This might look like a lot, well, it kind of is, but just like the changes in the previous section, we're not looking to shift existing metas in any significant way. Love it or hate it, 3-tick granite or gems will still be the go-to if you're looking to really maximize your gains. Instead of these changes are intended to give players greater flexibility to find mining training methods that suit them, so that these kinds of activities players are engaging with actually reflect the diversity of training methods on offer. Okay, now the heavier stuff. Now, these last 2 sections would be pretty easy for most players to understand, even if we just released a blog or an explainer video. These next sections, however, are the reason we're opting to tackle each section week by week. We'll give you a brief overview of each section and then explain our next steps and what to expect. So hold your horses and please keep reading before you start typing on Twitter, I'm assuming. Okay, so run energy changes. This is likely to be the shortest section here. Let's run through it. The top level overview. We'd like to revisit some of the work from 2022's November Game Jam and take a look at run energy drain, run energy regain, and how weight and agility level interact with all of the above. These changes will involve a whole lot of maths and absolutely require a beta before we can discuss this in any detail. We're waiting on engine changes that would be required to make any of these adjustments in the first place, but we'll be holding off on talking any more about these until you're able to get into a beta world and try these out. That's all, just want to keep on your radar. Now for the ones you've been waiting for and we've been dreading. NPC defense changes. Nothing feels quite as good as bringing the right tools for the job and exploiting an NPC's weakness to devastating effect. That being said, there are a lot of NPCs who are technically weak to a certain style, but not weak enough for it to really matter all that much. For example, gargoyles are weak to crush, but not by much, and often the kind of player who's killing gargoyles in the first place is better off using an abyssal whip than their best available crush weapon. We'd like to make existing NPCs' weaknesses feel more pronounced so that gear progression might feel a little less linear on your way to the endgame content, where bringing the right tools for the job becomes more noticeable. We're not looking to change things up to the point where you can't carry on what you're doing. To stick with the previous example, using an Abyssal Whip against gargoyles will still be perfectly fine. It just might be the case that Sarachnis Cudgel pulls ahead, even so slightly. If you have one kicking about, we don't have a full list yet, and there'd likely be too many NPCs to list in this post anyways, so we'll move on for now. See, like, that's one of those things, like, I wouldn't mind if you hit like a 1 extra max hit if you brought a cudgel versus a whip or something like that. Adjusting existing weaknesses is all well and good, but the biggest beneficiary of the change like this is obviously melee, since it has 3 distinct attack styles: stab, slash, crush. That allows for a lot more diversity and also for much broader reward space when it comes to designing new content. Ranged and magic are what they say on the tin. An NPC weak to range is weak to every ranged weapon, and an NPC weak to magic is equally weak to both the Tumikin Shadow and Fire Strike. This can make it a little challenging to add new rewards without either power creeping at an unhealthy rate or releasing content that doesn't see much use for many existing players. We'd like to at least take a look at rolling out some new defense types for NPCs and exploring elemental weaknesses. Okay, I actually really like this, and this makes total sense, right? You got the Twisted Bow. It's very old now, still like the best range weapon in the game. Blowpipe is like even a mid-level weapon, and it's still insane. And magic, crushes, like you got the all the ancient spells, and then you got the Tumikin Shadow, which just shreds through NPCs, right? I think magic and also range is a lot stronger than melee, even like top end melee gear, and there's a reason for that, right? Because of the power creep. Old School's combat system is iconic and integral to the game. No shit, Jagex, we don't want the evolution of combat. We have no interest in changing the feel and fundamentals of fighting in Old School, and want to make sure you're comfortable with the changes, which will farther outline in this section's dedicated blog. We're not looking to evolve combat. I like how they worded that. We're looking to create new adventures for rewards and give players a reason to use gear that's super cool, but often just sits in the bank gathering dust. I like that. We'd like to do this by introducing ranged type weaknesses that mirror the breadth of melee weaknesses. Heavy javelins and bolts, standard arrows, and light thrown weapons like knives or darts. And by introducing elemental weaknesses that might shake up magic progression beyond Trident, Sanguinesti Staff, Shadow in the form of air / smoke, water, ice, earth, shadow, fire, and blood. I think some creatures already are weak to like water spells. Maybe I'm totally wrong, but I think that's already a thing, right? But it would be really cool if like they added more like this, like different NPCs, right? And I really like the idea for range, like some creatures may be like really weak to darts, right? So the blowpipe would be amazing there. Other ones might be weak to arrows, so you could bring up the magic short bow again. You know what I mean? I like it a lot. Ultimately, what this boils down to is maybe the heavy ballista is worth bringing to gargoyles if you'd like to kill them with range, or fire giants might take a little extra damage from water and ice spells, which might free us up to make cool new things that fill more gaps without just moving power upwards. This is especially good with range and magic because it just makes so much sense, and I think it's so cool that certain creatures would be weak to this or that, right? So you can use all those items in your bank, especially like an Iron Man. You get an item, and then once you get the next best item, you never use that one again, right? I really like the idea of this. We're not going to get into any more right now because this one needs a separate blog, and we won't be releasing that blog until we're also ready to go with a playable beta. We appreciate the rebalancing on a scale like this is a lot, and that it would be totally unreasonable for you or to expect you to get a feel for things without being able to get your hands on. So we're not touching anything until you've had ample time to play around. For now, let's keep on trucking. So yeah, of course they're gonna have to have a beta for this, and it's gonna have to pass a poll, right? I don't know if it will pass a poll because people like to keep old school, but it just makes more sense, man. Okay, so we've got combat item adjustments. To start off, we'd like to bundle all of the following in with the defense changes beta, or add them to a separate beta of their own so that you can once again get properly stuck in and give us valuable feedback. When we're talking about adjustments here, they're separated into two broad categories, and we'll just call them what they are: nerfs and buffs. Historically speaking, it's relatively rare for us to actively rebalance gear, but as the game moves forward, we get a clearer picture of more long-term issues with items that either aren't living up to their potential and benefiting their status, or with items that hurt existing in future reward space and actively make progression feel less rewarding, right? If they never fix the blowpipe, that might be best in slot, man. So here's what we're looking to bring down in power and why. The Osmond's Fang, it's too strong on non-stab styles, slash, and harms the position of other high-value melee weaponry like the Scythe of Vitter, Blade of Salador, or the Inquisitor's Mace. The Void Waker, guaranteed hits, ignoring accuracy checks in PvM, makes it difficult to design worthwhile spec DPS weapons in the future without creeping upward significantly. The Ancient Godsword, currently healing from special attacks, basically you can outlast fights, creates too big an HP even when prayed against correctly. The Occult Necklace, far too much power in a single item. Bring its power down significantly and distribute its magic damage across other parts of magic progression. The Tome of Fire / Water, these need to be kept in mind alongside the potential for elemental weaknesses. If elemental weaknesses pick up some of the slack for elemental damages, these tomes likely become too strong and need adjusting accordingly. Yeah, I definitely see, like, for sure, like, the Occult Necklace, very powerful. I see the Osmond's Fang being very powerful, and obviously the Void Waker, right? And it's hard for them to design weapons that players will want more than these if these are already, like, quote-unquote best in slot, right? It kind of makes sense. Okay, so here's what we're looking to bring up in power and why. Adjusting damage on hit to roll from 1 to max hit instead of 0 to max hit. This makes early combat feel better as it stands. If your max hit is 1 and you deal 0 damage, 50% of the time you successfully hit the opponent, which can feel pretty terrible for new players. Yes, it can. Also improves access to information around successful Dragon Warhammer or Arclight hits. Very, very true. So the Scythe of Vitter, not enough existing use cases, often too expensive to be worth using. More on this later. Didn't Blood Rage drop like 50%? Elder Maul, not enough existing use cases, doesn't really benefit its status, right? It's a mega rare and no one uses it. The Inquisitors, extremely rare items. Mace often feels short of other offerings, even in places where Crush should be the go-to, and it's vastly more expensive than its equivalent weapons in other styles. Very true. The Soul Reaper Axe, a little too frustrating to feel good using. Okay. Reduced drain rate of bottom tier prayers like thick skin, burst of strength, etc. Existing drain rates make them effectively unusable in any real... Yeah, right? A lot of people don't even start using prayers until the end game because they just drain so quickly, and a lot of the gear doesn't have good prayer stats. And then improving Sharp Eye and Burst of Strength. The players need to hit 20s for these prayers to have any effect. Exactly, that's pretty much what I was just saying, which doesn't really line up with the level that they're unlocked at. Exactly, right? You're not going to use... You have 10 prayer, you're not going to use any of the prayers, you know what I mean? Okay, so we've got the Osmond's Fang. Old school's premier tank busting stab weapon was introduced alongside our most recent raid, the Tombs of a Masket. Since then, we've seen conversations crop up time and time again about its use across the board and whether its power is healthy. In particular, the release of Desert Treasure 2 and everybody's favorite vampire body, Vadoris, shone a spotlight on the Fang's efficacy when used to slash as opposed to stab. Ultimately, for a stab weapon with no additional usage costs, it sits a little too close to dedicated slash weapons that require upkeep, namely the Blade of Salador and the Scythe of Vitter. We don't want to alter its identity as a seriously strong stab weapon, but we feel it's necessary to remove a lot of its slashing power and have it properly occupy its niche as a stab weapon. So that's so that dedicated slash weapons are able to shine where they're supposed to. With this in mind, we feel like the cleanest solution is to have the Fang's unique double accuracy roll passive effect only apply to stab. I don't really know what to think of that. So this means that the Osmondon's Fang remains a fantastic generalist since its accuracy re-rolling allows it to perform well even against foes who aren't necessarily weak to stab, like Tecton, the Nightmare, or even bosses inside the Theater of Blood. While it's possible that potential changes to NPC defense might diminish the Fang's Jack of all trades status somewhat, we think it will prove to be an immensely valuable pickup and unlock for any player looking to make their first forays into PvM in old school. That's definitely for sure. And then we've got the Scythe of Vitter. We'd like to buff the Scythe. Hooray! Let's chat about how and why. So the why is pretty simple, and it comes up in a lot of conversations both within the team and the community. The Scythe of Vitter is a mega rare weapon from old school's hardest raid, but doesn't feel like it occupies the same space as the Twisted Bow or the Atumican Shadow, Jesus Christ, since it doesn't have any or as many use cases as other mega rare weapons. Of course, it's the same thing that they talked about before, how range and magic is way better than melee. It uses cost, or its usage cost is one of the highest in the game. It's not anymore because Blood Runes crashed, with the only more expensive weapon to use being the Toxic Blowpipe with Dragon Darts. That's crazy, actually. Even at some places where the Scythe is technically best in slot, it's often not good enough compared to the second or third best options to feel worth the cost of use. Yeah, exactly. That a lot of people get the Scythe and they're like, yeah, but I'm never gonna use it. Okay, so with all this in mind, we want to give the Scythe a slight accuracy buff so that its use cases are slightly expanded and that it performs a little better against NPCs with slightly more respectable defense levels. Additionally, we've aimed to cut the use cost down so that even in places where it doesn't utterly steamroll the second best in slot option, the time saved or extra GP per hour made feels like a worthwhile decision rather than just a steadily increased hole in the bank. So what they want to do is add a plus 15 slash accuracy to the Scythe. This gives the Scythe a slight boost in many of the instances listed above, but doesn't shift its power much in places where defense levels are already very low, TOB being a prime example. In terms of existing use cases, adding a plus 15 slash accuracy increases the Scythe's DPS by 0.2% at a really low defense boss like the Nilo or the General Guard, but 7% like General Guard. That's pretty crazy. Reduced charge costs from 1 vial of blood and 300 blood runes to 1 vial of blood and 200 blood runes for 100 charges. So it's not like it's going down that much. Let's see the thing, the breakdown here. The following numbers were taken from November 28th. They may vary slightly at the time of reading. The reduced cost per swing from 779 to 584 GP. So that's so crazy that people are paying that much for a swing of this weapon, or the reduced cost per hour being from about 1 million down to 700k. Does that really make that much of a difference? So this is an approximately a 26% usage cost reduction. I mean, that is kind of big, right? But at the same time, is it worth still spending 700k when you could use, say, a Fang or another weapon for free? Okay, what is next is mostly just waiting and seeing. Many of the topics within the project are too big to properly grasp just by reading a blog or watching a video. While we're happy to kick off the conversation off today, immediately we want you to see for yourself and give feedback based on the experience and feel, rather than predictions and spreadsheets, right? So they want to do like a beta or something like that. We'll begin rolling out dedicated blogs for all of the above sections in early 2024, starting with the skilling related adjustments before moving into the more combat focused stuff. We don't have any dates set in stone just yet, but we'll look to update you when we're able to start looking into dates, so you have something to look forward to. Well, it's definitely very interesting to see that they're going to be making some changes, especially realizing the power creep in the game, and it's kind of cool that they're actually going to have a solution and try and fix it. I know it's not everyone's favorite thing when they nerf their favorite items, like back in the day when they nerfed the blowpipe, and now it's kind of like the Osmond's Fang is one of the best melee weapons and they need to nerf it. But you know, there's also some benefits to this, right? They're making the scythe a little bit more viable for people, and they're having a lot of changes on skilling that seem pretty damn good. So overall, pretty solid thing, and I think like things like this are definitely needed for the game to keep it healthy and good forever. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching the video today, and I will catch you in the next one. See ya later.